it's real. Thank you guys for showing up. I know there was some parties last night, so thank you. There's also a lot of things going on in this time slot, so really humbled by anybody showing up for this. It's my first time at South by Southwest, and that's been like the hardest thing. Like, it feels like every single hour is just like a life decision which talk you're gonna go to. So really appreciative of that. Thanks to all my friends, everybody who's watching online, anybody who I met in line at something that came, thank you for that. A lot of lines at South by Southwest. Yesterday I felt like I was in an amusement park. I made an hour-and-a-half line to go on a roller coaster. It was a virtual reality coaster. It was pretty cool. A lot of virtual reality as well at South by Southwest. I've noticed it's abundant. VR is funny. It's like taking 3 tequila shots at the club. It's like you lose all your inhibition when you put this thing on. You forget other people can see you. It's really funny. So the power of we, crowdfunding Kenya, not Kanye. Who we are. I am Gabe Ferrer. I'm a senior copywriter at Alma down in Miami.
I'm Emily Hawkins, and I head up strategic partnerships for CrowdRise, which is a crowdfunding platform for anyone who wants to raise money for social good and cause.
Yep. So a little bit why we're here. We're here because of 2 rappers. First one is obvious. Obviously, what sparked this whole thing is when Kanye West said he was in debt. And the second one is Kendrick Lamar in a very indirect way. Just listening to his album recently, To Pimp a Butterfly, there's this line that he repeats a lot of times in that album. It says, I know you was conflicted, misusing your influence. And that just got me thinking, you know, like, they're gonna put a microphone in front of you, like maybe you shouldn't misuse your influence and use that time to say something positive. And I was like, really guys? You guys are gonna give me a mic? I mean, some of these guys can testify. Last time I had a microphone in front of me, I was singing Justin Bieber Sorry on the sidewalk.
Is it too late now to say sorry? Cause I miss you more than your body. So weird, man.
Great song.
Let's see what happens. Yeah, I can't believe I admitted that. So what am I here to talk about? The power of we, crowdfunding Kenya, not Kanye, obviously. Even though this is a website that I put together myself, really it was successful because of a lot of people coming together and putting it out there. So we is better than me is basically the gist of what you should take away from this. Just like as a writer, these are like the little things that I love to find, the gifts of language that we, for me, is like the right way to look at things. And then if you look at it like me, it's literally looking at something upside down. I know M comes before W in the alphabet, so you could technically make the same argument the other way around, but because if you only think of yourself, well, you end up on a website that goes viral. So Help Kenya, not Kanye was like the manifestation of that concept of we being more important than the me, you know, thinking of Kenya collectively being more important than just thinking of one person. So a little bit about how this started for anybody that's not familiar. Kanye tweeted out, as he frequently does, I write this to you, my brothers, while still $53 million in personal debt. Please pray we overcome. This is my true heart. On the eve of Valentine's Day, so a true romantic. And then the following day he wrote, in relation to the billionaires and investors in San Francisco, you'd rather open up one school in Africa like you really helped the country. If you want to help, help me. Never mind that Africa is a continent, but you know, if you want to help, help me. And some people did. This was crazy to me. They set up a GoFundMe site. And you know, they raised over $7,000 to get Kanye out of debt. So I was like, this is pretty crazy. Maybe that money should go elsewhere.
Like to Africa.
Yeah. So I asked myself, man, really? This is like what people are doing? You know, and all my friends were just reaching out to me. It's being a Kanye fan is the hardest thing to be. It's just you have to constantly be defending him and his actions. So I was like, I just don't want to defend him anymore. In the wise words of philosopher Dwight Schrute, they say the best offense to good defense. False. The best offense is offense. So I decided to go on the offensive and put this site together. So as of this morning, we've raised over $8,000. So that's pretty good. Thank you guys. That goes a long way in Africa. And I just like outline here how, you know, as a fan it's tough, but, you know, maybe we should redirect our energy. He recently released a Life of Pablo album, and I'm just putting into perspective, maybe we should be thinking about the life of many. Like some of the things on the website were just shedding light on these crazy things that are happening. Like 42% of the country is below the poverty line. You know, I think that's something that definitely needs to be changed. And the concept of the site was just to, you know, equate the dollar value of a way that you can help Kanye and see how far that money can go in Kenya to help people. So for example, a pair of Yeezy Boost retails for $200. For roughly the same amount of money, you can educate children in Kenya with the UNICEF School in a Box kit, meets the needs of a teacher and 40 students for 3 months. But of course, people aren't buying these shoes at retail value. They're getting sold for much, much more, like your monthly mortgage. This came out like 2 weeks ago. A woman blasting her husband on Reddit for doing that. So it's crazy. It's crazy. This madness needs to change. Some other examples, he's selling his sweatshirt for $700, just like white sweatshirts. Nothing on them. Just say Jesus. You can feed a school.
Kanye made them with his bare hands.
Yeah, yeah. You can feed 200 malnourished Kenyan orphans and their teachers for a month with that money. And it's funny, when I was putting the site together, I was just trying to find people on the website that verbalized how far that money can go in an interesting way. So I found this charity called One Child Village, which now I later found out is just run out of somebody's house in Alberta, Canada. And that blew up for them, you know, like there's just been all over the morning show, Global BC. Like I was so happy to help that guy. He's been very appreciative because he's having a hard time getting the word out there. Just seeing people say things like, sorry Kanye, instead of paying a streamer album, I donated water to Kenya. Like that was really motivating for me. And in general, the reaction was super. Got Batman and Superman to tweet about it. They approved this message. 55,000 shares, likes, and comments, over 6,000 tweets. And their website broke, one of the charities. You know, they just weren't ready for all that traffic to go their way. I didn't notify any of these guys that I would be sending tons of people there. I just didn't even think it was going to be that successful. I honestly did it just for like my Facebook friends. So this was kind of an issue, right? Their website breaking, and I think that's where Emily with CrowdRise helped, you know, simplify that for the charities, make sure that that doesn't happen. And in general, Kenya embraced it. You know, you see here, Travel Artistry Africa tweeting at Kenya blogs, and I found it really interesting that people started using the hashtag for their own charities that weren't listed on the site. Builders of Hope. This person is just a photographer that threw the hashtag at the end of his post. So at one point it was trending, and you know, it was a movement. It was a way to get your word out there. And then it really blew up once the media started covering it. Over 100 media articles and 8,000 shared articles. And then it's just some stats from like the first couple weeks. Actually, this is just the first week. Over 3 million hits. And you see on one day it was almost averaging like 1 million hits a day. The visitors have been pretty diverse. United States only makes up 20%. And then most people are visiting it on their phone, so if you're gonna do something like this, optimize it for your phone. 20% on desktop, laptop, 2% unknown, and 0.1% spider, which means, dude, watch out for spiders. They're using the internet. Crazy. I don't know what spiders are, but cool. So, all right, so that's kind of the story of that website. Very nice, great success, but you know, I reached a certain limit where I did need some more help amplifying it. And that's where I think that, we can help each other succeed.
Yeah. What do I push here? This one?
This one, yeah.
Oh, the forward button? Okay. So we saw what Gabe was doing, and, at CrowdRise, we're sort of obsessed with this notion of taking pop culture moments, especially sort of laughable ones, and turning them into something positive. And so we were just totally blown away by what Gabe was doing, and we suspected that, he was sending donors all over the internet, right, and not really able to track what the impact was that he was creating. So he was sending them to charity websites, which is awesome for the charities, except when their site goes down, it makes it pretty tough. CrowdRise is a platform that allows impact to live under one umbrella. So the idea that, especially in moments of, of great either pop culture sort of amplification or of crisis, we generally try to create campaigns where we can amplify and help. So around the Flint water crisis, we created a microsite that enabled anyone who had launched a fundraiser, who wanted to launch a fundraiser to help Flint. It all lived under one page. It means that when Pearl Jam launches a fundraiser and it lives next to just a guy who lives in Detroit's fundraiser, it's sort of the idea that the rising tide really does lift all ships, right? And we can be helping to amplify that. So that was really what we tried to do for Gabe. We took just his awesome design and his awesome idea and built out a microsite on CrowdRise that just reflected exactly what he was doing, but enabled all the fundraising to live in one place so he could track all of his impact. And that's really what we're doing on the site sort of every day, right? We do it for the Boston Marathon, the New York City Marathon. We do it for organizations like Red Cross and UNICEF so that they can watch their fundraising and watch people really contribute from all across the internet. The idea for us, and I think this was where we got really excited about working with Gabe, was that we really are trying to build a community of people who care about impact and who care about making a difference. And the notion that you could take this sort of laughable thing that Kanye was doing and turn it into something really incredibly positive. I mean, not just the funds raised, but the awareness built, that, just one person had this idea, and all we really did was help sort of amplify that and deliver a mechanism that made it easier for people to contribute. And that's kind of what the site is built for. The notion that you can sort of weave giving into your day-to-day and that you can weave fun into your giving is something that we're totally obsessed with. So, people on the site do things like, if I raise $7,000, I will let my 2-year-old daughter, dress me every day for the next month, right? Like, absurd. We had this amazing organization that got totally slammed on the internets for baking a cake. They are an organization that makes cakes for sick children in the images of their heroes. They baked an Elsa cake from Frozen, and they just got demolished on the internet because the Elsa wasn't pretty enough. So they came to us and they were like, we want to turn this into something positive. And we're like, hell yeah. So they did a contest for people to vote on their organization's cakes that they liked the best, and people voted with dollars, and they raised $12,000 doing that, just sort of in response to this nasty internet meme. And I think the idea here, is that really there's just a world of opportunity, right, for anyone who wants to take something like Gabe did and turn it into a moment for good, right? So, a kid who gives up his birthday because he realizes at 9 years old that there are children just like him that are, in the hospital struggling with cancer treatments, right? He raises $2,000. I mean, it's not a ton of money, but it's a lot of money for a 9-year-old. This is another kid, Tyler Armstrong, the youngest kid to hike Everest. That's what it was, crazy. He raised $10,000, right? He challenged sort of his network as a 10-year-old, I think, to fundraise with him. the idea that we can turn sort of any person can become a superhero if they have a cause, they have a passion, and they want to do something positive for the world. This is a campaign where a woman just decided she was going to travel around the world. She's a huge travel buff. She was going to pick something that she could help with in 24 hours. She launches a campaign one day, posts a video, talks about a problem, asks people to donate, tells them how she's going to fix this problem, and then in 24 hours does it, films it, and delivers the results to the world so you can see exactly where your money is going.
Cool. I think this kind of sums up that we can do anything. Just ask Leo. He finally won his Oscar. He had to get mauled by a bear to do it, but yeah, I mean, that's the gist. Hopefully, you know, when you guys leave here, you feel like you can do anything as well. Because unlike Beyonce, I did not wake up like this. I didn't, you know, I'm a writer by trade, so I'm not an art director or designer, not website developer at all. So I woke up that morning with that idea and I decided that I wanted to be the one to make it. So I built it on WordPress. I didn't know how to use WordPress that morning. I just took like 3 hours of tutorials, and granted, you know, where I learned WordPress, it's not like a complicated site if you guys get a chance to check it out, but it's up there, you know. So I think that's the point, is that technology is freeing up our minds so there's more room for ideas. And that's not a new thing, you know. When the calculator came out, I don't think anybody was doing the quadratic formula by hand. So I think that's the whole point of technology, and I think why we're here is like seeing up what's out there so that, you know, all right, that something's gonna automate that, so that then I'm more free to use my brain to think of a cool shit, you know. It's just, that's basically what I think about technology. I think in the future, really, knowledge is gonna be determined by how good you are at Googling things, like how crafty you are, you know, in the search bar. That's like a lot of times, even like remembering things, I just like remember keywords and I'll just like rearrange until like the article pops up, you know? Because really that just makes me think, why should we know anything? Just what? For what? To impress this guy? You know, every time I watch Jeopardy, I feel like I'm a dumb person. Like, those questions are really hard. So yeah, maybe we don't need to know anything. You know, Google's such a powerful tool. Because now we can just crowdsource experts, right? Whatever you don't know, there's somebody within seconds that knows what you need to know. And that's such a cool luxury to have in this time. For example, there's Joseph Gordon-Levitt has this website called Hit Record. It's like a completely different style of production company, where he brings people together to collaborate. I mean, you have to just like leave the ego at the door, basically, but you know, you're putting up all your like intellectual property up on there, and then just letting people like give you feedback, change it. You know, as you can see, there's creative challenges for writing, you know, learning how to sing, acting, cinematography, like all kinds of stuff. And then basically all that's housed on that website, and by the end of it, his team, his panel basically picks a few to produce, and they fund it and they put it out there. That's amazing. Tongle as well, you know, if you're a creative person, you can put your services on there, and if you need creative services, there's over 100,000 writers and directors ready to go. For advertising, branded content, music videos, ideation, branding, all kinds of stuff. So you just have to have the desire to look for it, and you can find it. Skillshare, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, but there's just more and more classes every single day, like of the weirdest things you can imagine. Like if you want to be an expert in something, you can just search for it. And I love it because it's, you learn at your own pace. Lessons are pretty short. And you feel really good. You know. Fiverr as well is an amazing tool. Tons of people doing weird, quirky things. I searched for horse race voiceover, and this guy will record nearly anything you want as a horse race for $5. So that will be coming to a wife near you pretty soon.
Why?
That's for you, Ellie. I know you're tuned in. The Open IDEO, I think, is pretty amazing. It's a global community working together to design solutions for the world's biggest challenges. So they put out these challenges, like this is an example. They asked the question, how might we use market-based approaches to expand water and sanitation solutions among low-income households in India? And you can see their process very organized. So far they've received 142 ideas. They'll go through a feedback phase. They'll have 2 weeks to refine it. Then their panel of people will evaluate it. They'll pick the top ideas and then they'll make it. You know, and that whole system for consistently empowering people to submit their ideas, even if all they have are just ideas and they don't know how to make them, there are people out there that will, you know, and I think that's so cool. And if all else fails, just go to Craigslist, guys. That's, you know, this guy needs a horse whisperer. You'll find it for $1,000. There are people out there willing to do anything. I don't know if you guys seen Craigslist Joe, but this guy goes around the US literally only using Craigslist, asking people for help, hitchhiking, you know, staying in people's houses, getting free food. He literally doesn't use any of his own money. So people out there in the world are not as bad as we think sometimes. So basically I'm telling you that there's a chance for you to do whatever it is that you want to do, and there's tools out there for you to do it. Specifically, another thing that I learned from my website is that we kind of love puns. As a writer, I'm constantly being discouraged from using any punny language, and yes, sometimes it is awful and it just looks like a Hot Topic t-shirt and it's bad, but people seem to dig it. Best water-related pun involving Kanye West ever. Granted, I think that is probably a very small pool. I don't know how many of those exist, but people seem to be digging it. Help Africa, not Kenya, wouldn't have had the same ring to it. So the name definitely helped. And brands out there are using it, you know. For example, this brand put out there for breast cancer, you know, encouraging people to check their melons. Granted, that was maybe low-hanging fruit, pun intended, but, you know, it got people's attention. Captain Obvious for Hotels.com is running for president by literally running. This Super Bowl ad, you guys may remember, was a walk-in closet with Christopher Walken. I feel like that entire idea was born out of just this pun, you know? And whether they can get Christopher Walken or not. IKEA in Singapore is doing this really cool thing with a shelf help guru. It's basically people on the Facebook page are writing about things they need, and then they'll reply back with a pun and a link to that item on the website. So, you know, maybe it's time to brush up on things, and then like a link to that brush, or some things are just such a turn on, and then a link to that lamp. So it works. Puns work sometimes. So it definitely helped. Mainly it helped because it set the tone, right? This was kind of like a silly website. It was for a serious cause, but it made people laugh instead of feel guilty. And I think more charities should do that. Went to a talk a few days ago where they talked about satire in news and how that's becoming a very viable way to get your news information, because it just puts it in a way that you want to repeat it to people, that you can understand it. And I think that's kind of what this website did, is just put it into perspective for people, make people want to share it, because it wasn't taking itself so seriously. Something else I think we can do is that we can forgive. A lot of the articles that were written about the website and the media said that I became a Kanye hater or an X-fan or something like that. For anybody that was here at the beginning, you know I was blasting Kanye. I love him. This is just like giving him some tough love. So, you know, the truth is that everything you do on social media is amplified. And for a celebrity, even more. The internet's not safe. And apparently neither is the mall. This angel fell asleep in the mall, and the internet decided to put her in the Sistine Chapel, and in the Lion King, and in wrestling, and as a stripper, and like. So basically, yeah, you know, like if you're a celebrity, it becomes that much more difficult for you to, you know, not make a mistake. And when you do make a mistake, then it gets amplified. So I'm gonna use this piece, or if this ever gets to Kanye, this is like my message to him. He put out an album called The Life of Pablo, so I would encourage him to maybe live a little bit more like Pablo Picasso, not Escobar. Yeah, Pablo Picasso didn't have Twitter, and if he did, maybe we'd think he's an asshole. I don't know like how he would have been on Twitter. That probably goes for any musician. Like, my favorite artist of all time is Bob Dylan, and like he's a very private individual. You know, I don't know how that is. Who knows what the Beatles would have been like if they were on Snapchat? Maybe the worst, you know? So all they left behind was their art, and that's why we love them for it. And if Kanye stops distracting people from his art, which I think, if you look at it objectively, is very good musically, if he stops distracting his art with his Twitter rants, then I think maybe we can love him for it too. Sure, he said some ridiculous things, like asking Mark Zuckerberg to invest $1 billion into his ideas.
On Twitter, not Facebook.
Yeah, right.
He asked him on Twitter.
Ridiculous. But we can forgive him because historically as a society, we do that, right? We forgave Michael Jackson hanging his baby over a balcony because Thriller is amazing and has made society a much better place. We forgave, or are trying to forgive, Steve Harvey for making that mistake because he owned up to it, and he had the funny Super Bowl commercial where he kind of poked fun at himself. So I'm inviting Kanye, please poke fun at yourself by donating to our cause, because I think deep down inside he knows it's for good. Donate a buck just so I can say, you know, that you did it, and then maybe as a society we can forgive him as well. We can change the conversation. The internet is a terrible place sometimes. It's full of trolls and nasty comments and memes, like this poor woman in the mall. I think the internet should be how we punish people in jail. Like, once you get convicted, we should create a YouTube video about it, and then we should project the comments in your jail cell and not allow you to reply. Just like Sexy Kitten 44 thinks you're a turd, and like that's your punishment. I can totally imagine like some people saying like, hey, are you sure we should rob this bank? Because if we get caught, the internet's gonna light us up. So I don't know, maybe that's what I'll talk about next year, using technology as a deterrent to crime. A joke, but maybe an actual viable thing to think about. But we can change the conversation for good. This is one of my favorite tweets during this project, and sometimes the interwebs can be a good place, and that for me was a manifestation of it's not usually a good place, and I think we need to change that. I think we just have to pick a side and not be afraid of criticism. And the response from this website has been overwhelmingly positive, but I have had some criticism. I've had some people say, well, get off Kanye's back. Or some people say, well, worry about your own country, it's a disaster. Some people from Kenya saying, hey, you know, like, we're educated and we don't need your help, and we're not, you know, like what we're made out to be, you know, in the media, and I totally hear that out as well. But there are places in Kenya that are poor and rural places, and I think this is doing good for them. Not hurting anybody, I wouldn't say so. But that's part of what comes with putting your idea out there, is preparing yourself for some of this criticism and just being all right with that. I think we're living in a very politically correct society right now. This is a quote from some comedian I saw last week in LA at the Comedy Store. Political correctness is a form of mental communism. He then followed that up by saying that he misses watching Doggy Style in public because we live in such a PC society that dogs don't even do it outside anymore. But this quote really stuck with me. You know, if we're afraid to speak our mind, then everybody just says the same thing, right? And I think that's a dangerous thing in general. So you just have to, you know, whatever you think, just say it, whatever. You know, that's how things used to be. I think that's what's liberating about a comedy club too. Everybody that goes there knows that there's like, it's a safe haven, and you can make fun of people and do things like that. Nobody's gonna get offended because they know like you're not a bigot or a racist or whatever. You're just saying, you know, things that are funny and like trying to make a point through them. So yeah, here's just some great examples of like changing the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, right? You don't change the conversation unless you take some risks. And I don't know if you guys were following the Bette Midler, Kim Kardashian Twitter battle about her nude selfie that said something like, next time you're gonna have to swallow the camera because that's the only thing we haven't seen yet. And Kim just kind of brutal, but Kim went after her pretty hard, and they went back and forth a little bit. And then last week, Bette did something really interesting to flip it and posted this Instagram selfie, which is hilarious. If you look at the background, she's got her naked body in a mirror behind her. But she said, why don't you put your selfie to work for a good cause? Join me on CrowdRise at Stages for Success, which is Bette's charity, saying that she would match her donation 2 to 1. No response from Kim, but we're waiting. But I think this is just a great example of taking something, that got some attention and had the potential to blow up into something much nastier and sort of turn it into something for good. The other thing that we see a lot on CrowdRise is the notion that just because a cause is serious, like poverty in Kenya or multiple sclerosis, it doesn't mean that the action you take has to be serious. These are 3 guys who every year, they're not athletes, they're not gonna run a marathon and ask people to donate. So instead, they pick a concert every year of a band they hate, and they go to that concert totally sober. And they ask people to support them. So they went to see, this past year, they went to see Cher and I think Cyndi Lauper was opening. And they upped the stakes. They said if they raised $5,000, they would go in full drag. And they did. And they raised over $6,000. They got found by security and moved up to the VIP section. And were like, basically, it was like being a celebrity. There was like paparazzi. But just like such an amazing idea that takes very little. This happens to be the same cause, but this is another example. This is actually a guy who works at CrowdRise who found out last year that he was diagnosed with MS, and he decided to do something about it, right? He's decided that every year for his birthday he was gonna do a big fundraiser for research. And his promise was that he would take suggestions of one ridiculous thing he would do if he raised a certain amount of money. So he took some suggestions and he gave some options. He said he would dress up like a hot dog for 24 hours and live his life normally and not tell anyone why if they asked. And then a couple of other things, but that was the thing he did, and he videotaped the whole day, and it was insane. I mean, we don't have time to show the video, but you can check it out on CrowdRise. He has someone follow him with a camera, and people's reactions. He's walking down the street in LA, and people's reactions are amazing. He's just like, they're like, what's that? There's a dude. And he's just doing normal things, right? He like goes to the gym, he does like everything, goes to work. It's awesome. So I think the idea here that and I think Gabe really tapped into this, that you can take something that's inherently pretty serious and make light of it, turn it into something that makes you not feel guilty or sad or whatever. I mean, we all remember sort of those ASPCA videos with like Sarah McLachlan in the background and like the tiny sad dogs, and you're just like, you don't donate because you're too sad, you're crying too hard, you can't like get up off the couch. But the idea that you tap into something, people like to laugh, people like to feel good. So
yeah. This is in the spirit of the Kanye success. I just decided to do something else with one of my students, Stephanie Granado at Miami Ad School. I don't know how familiar you guys are with WCW. It's Women Crush Wednesdays. It's basically an Instagram trend where, for the most part, guys are posting about hot women that they have crushes on, scantily clad women. So I just kind of want to change that conversation and say, maybe WCW shouldn't stand for Women Crush Wednesdays. Maybe it should stand for Women Can Whatever, So we're trying to develop this website. It's work in progress still, but it's womencanwhatever.com, and it's the pictures that you can share on Instagram instead of these scantily clad women, and actually connecting people with those women on Instagram. Each one of those tiles links back to their page, and these are actual women doing something, right? Defying gravity, pumping iron, pilots, designers, baseball players, you know. We want to just put up new women on the site every week, taking submissions from anybody. Hopefully people create their own, you know, for their mothers or wives, whatever. You know, just trying to, ultimately, we want to infiltrate that hashtag. So if you scroll through it, you're not only seeing girls in bikinis, but you're seeing some of these, you know, successful women. And, you know, when I think about the website, I'm like, all right, we've gotten over 5 million people visit it and only $8,000. Not that I'm ungrateful, $8,000 is amazing. But maybe asking people for money isn't always successful. I'm just asking you to change a behavior, you know? So I thought maybe let's go on that route for this new endeavor. So check that out, guys. I think in general, doing good is our responsibility as citizens of the world, right? And that's something that I would like you guys to take away from this. And it's really easy to do good, but it's even easier to do nothing, you know? This is a funny tweet. When I lay down to go to sleep at night, I remember all the things I forgot to do. Hashtag burrito, hashtag help Kenya, not Kanye. So I'm just challenging you guys, don't be a slacktivist. I think I've displayed how easy it is to go out and do something. So hopefully, you know, after this talk, you guys feel really motivated to think of something and put it out there in the world. I think even Kanye can agree with that. Or maybe that's because his wife just bailed him out and she transferred $53 million into their joint account. I don't think they were in debt to begin with, but oh, Kim. Anyways, we can answer questions now. There's a mic back there if anybody wants to ask anything. Thank you so much for being here.
Woo. Yeah.
This is our
Hi.
Hey.
Hello. Yeah. So CrowdRise versus Charity Network versus all the other fundraising online platforms.
Yeah, great question. So for those who don't know, sorry, what's your name?
I'm Lauren. I run an advertising agency called Advertising for Good.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
we've been looking at all this stuff, and I haven't really known much about CrowdRise,
Yeah.
but Charity Network is hosting
Yeah.
in a few minutes. So I'm interested in the difference between all these platforms.
Great. So yeah, Lauren's talking about a couple of their platforms out there. So CrowdRise, the number one, we're the only site that's really dedicated to social good. So you have Kickstarter for creative projects. You have Indiegogo, which sort of spans the whole spectrum. You have Prizeo, which is, you know, for contests and raffles for good. A couple of other ones that are really focused on contests, really. The main and most massive difference is that CrowdRise operates on the notion that even if you don't have huge financial capital, you can use social capital to make a huge impact. So this campaign didn't actually use this functionality, but for the campaign that Gabe's working on now, it actually would be a great functionality for it. So we have a functionality that allows you to build teams, right? So the notion that you can be the Red Cross, and instead of sending people to your website to donate, you're sending them to CrowdRise because you're not asking them to donate anymore, you're asking them to fundraise. And so it means that if you go out to your 8,000 person list, instead of asking each of those people to donate, if you ask them to go out, build a team, go out and ask their friends to donate to their campaigns, you're going to be vastly more successful in your fundraising, and you're going to gain a lot more donors, right? You're going to just tap into a huge new audience because peer-to-peer works so well, because people are actually encouraged to do something for a cause that I care about, not, you know, the executive director of the cause. Sure.
Hello, I'm Suzan from Istanbul. I was wondering how the geographical and demographic distribution of the people who donate, how did it change after you change, or like how when you use more funny, let's say, or more entertaining how do you say? I'm sorry, my English is not that good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll be honest with you, I didn't have like a target audience to begin with. I just started like infiltrating the Kanye conversation on Twitter, so I mean that was a big reason for success, right? There was like millions of people tweeting about Kanye, so just by hashtagging his name in my post, like obviously I was part of that thread. But as you can see, like it just kind of was pretty, equal across like a lot of countries. I don't know that I have an answer for you about like how the humor was part of the success and like spreading it out geographically, but just I think that the takeaway from it being so equal is that people like to laugh in every country, and that's what made it a universal message.
Yeah, and one of the things to think about is that we don't really know what happened in terms of actual conversion and donations until the site was moved over to CrowdRise, right? Because we can sort of guess and we know where traffic was coming from and stuff like that, but we don't know who the donors were or where they were donating until we're able to sort of track that. So now we do, right?
Yeah,
now
totally.
we can look at the list of donors, and Gabe can communicate with them, which is massive, right? So he's able to keep them posted on all of the awesome stuff he does in the future.
Hi, my name's Felicity. I'm from Australia and I work in PR. My questions have kind of been answered, but I'll ask them anyway. So basically the first one was, obviously you said you started a WordPress site like that day. How do you get an audience before you've got one? I mean, you obviously just said then that you went and infiltrated the Kanye post. Do you think obviously aligning yourself with a star like that sort of helped you get that exposure, or how do you get an audience when you're starting something from scratch?
Absolutely. I mean, definitely part of the success. I think that's also what I'm trying to do with the WCW thing, take something that's existing and, make myself part of that conversation to try to change it. So that's a good strategy for if you want to put something out there. I had friends, I don't know if you guys saw it, but they did like Leonardo DiCaprio's acceptance speech video. They just cut together things from his different movies. And that blew up as well because of Leo's name, So totally using celebrity if they're being talked about a lot helps.
Yeah, celebrity, trending topics, any stuff that's in the news. I think wherever you can sort of tap into a social media conversation, you're going to be more successful at building an audience.
Yeah, and that probably answers my next one, is how do you differentiate yourself and stand out, which I know was sort of asked first, because there are so many cause-related campaigns these days.
Yeah, I think it was easy for people, and it was funny to them, like helping Kenya, not Kanye, I think is already kind of like a funny sentence to tell people. So, and that's part of the reason why I had this section about puns. Like I truly believe like the name of your idea is like so important. Maybe it's just because like I'm a copywriting nerd, but even when I present an idea to like my partner, I think about what I'm going to call it before, because sometimes that just sells it. Like I don't know, a few years ago, Burger King did this thing called Whopper Virgins. They went to these remote countries and they gave people that had never tried Burger King and McDonald's. They did like a taste test with them. And I think the name Whopper Virgins was more successful than if it would have been called the ultimate taste test, So just thinking about what you're going to call it and making it something funny and like sharing it that way is totally like a reason for success as well.
Cool, thanks.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Margiro. I come from Greece. We have an offline platform to crowdfund social purpose projects. I do also believe that the thing right now in storytelling in campaigns is, having a laugh and trying to make it not feel guilty, as you just said. But however, where do we find the right line to be serious about what we are doing? Because right now, for example, in Greece, we have all this refugee crisis and, of course, the economic crisis. And I'm trying to understand how we can have a balance in our storytelling so that we can be also serious about what we are doing.
Right.
Well, what's your experience and what's your input about that?
I'm very firm in my stance on humor because when you're asking about balance, I think that there's an imbalance already, right? With a lot of serious things and maybe not enough funny things out there for those causes. So I think we're just trying to like catch up to everything else. At my agency, we work on some like government, projects and things like that where they have a very serious tone that I'm trying to change. They're very like convinced that maybe serious like front focus groups and things like that is what resonates with people, and I don't think so. I mean, I think there was a talk yesterday about how to stop speaking in bullshit to people, and like we're all human beings, like I think if you just talk to people the way that you would talk to your friend, that's how it's gonna get to them, and I don't think by making it not serious, it's not a serious cause. Now that the trade expo is open downstairs, I encourage you guys to go down. There's a person doing a project for North Korea, where you can shut up Kim Jong-un by putting a USB in his mouth. And it's really cool, graphically and everything. The idea is that they're gonna put content on the USB that is illegal in North Korea and get it to the people. And like silly shit, like an episode of Friends, but just that'll help people see like, man, what is this society that we're living in? There's a better world out there. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to answer your question in terms of like how to also be serious about it, because I don't necessarily think that being funny means that you're not being serious about something.
I also think that it's about finding the organic fit, right, and finding the emotion. I mean, I think if there's not an organic fit for humor, then it's asking yourself like, what is the other emotion? What's the thing there? In terms of the, like I think thinking about the Syrian refugee crisis, it's challenging right now to find a humorous line in. There are probably some humorous elements that you could tackle. I think whatever you think about Donald Trump, the idea that he would ban all Muslims from entering the United States there's a lot of emotion there, right? There's like, hopefully that makes you angry. It probably is also worth poking some fun at because it's fucking ludicrous. That's my opinion. So I think thinking about sort of like what's the line in, where's the organic fit is really important when thinking about is there humor, what's the emotion?
Hey.
Hi. So I heard you mention the word slacktivism towards the end, and
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could speak to that. What is slacktivism to you guys? And I've heard a lot about getting an audience and getting known on the internet, but I'm wondering if you could speak more to once you get people to recognize you and use your hashtags, what then? So what exactly do you mean by slacktivism? What is your idea around it? And the other question I had is because in Africa, there's a huge upsurge in people using mobile phones and using hashtags and Twitter. And I'm just wondering if you guys noticed people using Twitter in Kenya even having any kind of response to this hashtag that you guys started.
Yeah, the response from Kenyans was like pretty overwhelming. Tons of them were using the hashtag, and that's what made me feel like I should drive this a little bit more forward. Once the country embraced it, I was like, okay, this is a good thing for them. So definitely a lot of response from them. In terms of slacktivism, I know there's like a whole culture around that and like a lot of information about slacktivism. I didn't dive deep into that. I just like the term made sense with what I was saying, but I think it goes back to that Kendrick Lamar that I said in the beginning, like once you have an influence, maybe you shouldn't misuse it. And that's why I feel so motivated to now to do more things for social good, because I feel like maybe I have the people's ear for like 10 minutes, or whatever, and like I should put things out there. Another thing I think is the disparity between the people that visited the site and the people that donated. A lot of those people did share it, so I wouldn't say that sharing the site is slacktivism. They obviously spread the word and maybe got it to some people that did donate. But it's really easy to also just donate, right? So I would encourage people that if you see something that like, plucks at your heartstrings or like, bring something into perspective, then it's not too difficult to just take the action. Cool, I think that's it for questions, guys. Again, I appreciate it.
One more.
Oh,
One more. Hey,
Hey.
I'm Greg. I'm creative director from San Francisco. So when I saw that you were a copywriter, I was like, oh, I gotta check this out.
thanks.
Great theme, great title. That was the other great hook. So my question is, if you're chasing kind of pop culture on these things, what's your, like, coming from the ad world? I was thinking, oh, he probably put a brief together and had a strategy behind it, figured out who his audience was and how he's going to get to them. But if you're chasing pop culture, how do you sustain it? Like, eventually, that's pop is pop, and then it goes away.
Absolutely.
So what's
Yeah.
your strategy behind that?
My strategy is that this hopefully is like the culmination of Help Kenya, Not Kanye, really being out here talking to you guys about it and like getting, this last surge of people to visit that site. Obviously, people are gonna get tired of talking about that website, and I think that's why I'm motivated to do other things, because I know that this is a flash in the pan, but a lot of people in Kenya have started using this as like a movement for them and attaching that to a lot of their posts. So that's the reality of chasing pop culture, is that it is gonna be quick. And that's the other reason why I felt like I had to do it in like 24 hours before the message was not relevant, and maybe why I didn't develop a brief and, ask for too much help, because I just wanted to be in full control and like just put it out into the world. So pop culture, you'll see like a big spike and then it'll just disappear. But hopefully this site will remain on CrowdRise. People will be seeing it. I don't have any intentions of taking it down. And yeah, the end of the story for me again would be like if Kanye says, cool, I saw this and I think it's pretty cool.
Right. Well, awesome idea.
Thank you.
My other question is just, are you taking this on the road? Like, would you come out to San Francisco? I work for Salesforce, and like foundation work is a huge part of our values, and I think this would be a very
Cool.
big
Let's
story.
let's chat after this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking my question. My name is Jake Srinivasan. I run the Austin World Music Festival and the Texas World Cultures Conference, and just wanted to say it's amazing to hear stories like this, and where you guys have taken the courage of your convictions and done something. So my question, actually one comment I have really is, it's not so much about the amount, but the fact that you were able to get people to do something without promising them perks is really amazing, because people are so fatigued with being asked to donate. So I've learned a lot from here. My question to you is, I know you've talked about all of these different ideas, but how do you actually, is there a plan for or thought to coalesce this into more of an ongoing thing as opposed to separate different aspects? Clearly CrowdRise is great as a platform to bring these together. Have you thought about other ways to make this more of a much larger, taking not just the Kenya concept, the aspect of it, but the concept of that into a much larger concept?
Yeah, I think it's probably something that we'll put our heads together on to continue to think about. I think this is kind of connected to the previous question, where it's like, it is a pop culture thing, and because the site is called Help Kenya, Not Kanye, I don't know how much longer I can use the Kanye part of it, but I'm definitely super motivated to continue to help Kenya and visit and see what that money is doing there, building classrooms and things like that and providing for people. So definitely there's a lot of energy from our side to continue things.
Just a follow-up comment is, I host bands from, I've hosted one of the most popular bands from Kenya here at South by a couple of years ago. And I also hosted View Farka Toure and some really great African musicians. I think what you have has enormous impact for the continent. And that's why I'm kind of, my mind's racing on how this one hashtag or tagline or website name is not just about that. I think you're really onto something.
Cool, thank you.
way
Yeah,
larger.
let's talk after this. Cool. And I think you made a really important point too about not promising perks. In advertising, that's often what we have to do is how are we gonna get people to this concert or whatever? Well, give them a flight to get here or something like that. So I think the content being interesting enough is probably where advertising needs to go in general.
I think also appealing to a little bit to FOMO, right? The idea of being part of something while it's cool and hot is very attractive. It's probably a perk in itself.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you guys. I'm so pumped about this. Cool. I'll be here for anybody that wants to talk.